This is historical. It's the first time we're going to have the majority of Brazilians in a TP episode. It's never happened before. I've always been the black sheep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Talking Perspectives, the official podcast of the Sonic Perspectives vast media empire. This is Gonzo coming at you from downtown San Antonio, and we have a sizable panel this week. Joining us from a burial ground in an Ontario town is Sonic Perspectives Canadian at large and repeat offender on this very podcast, Rodrigo Altaf.
Hello, hello. Go the Raptors.
All right. From the... Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys had a moment that didn't quite work out for you or something.
Come on.
Yeah, okay. All right. From the heart of Sao Paulo, a man whose crazy great voice you've heard with the Brazilian band MAESTRICK, please welcome Mr. Fabio Caldeira.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we've got another fantastic singer from Brazil. You've heard him in Magician, and if you've been to Prague Para, you probably saw him with Daydream XI. Guitarist, singer, Tiago Masseti.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
And last but not least, joining us from San Antonio's north side is keyboardist, guitarist, and composer of the symphonic metal band HELIOSAGA, Mr. Damien Villareal.
Hello, hello.
All right, so we tried to get one more guy onto the podcast, but we're going to have to do with a recording that he made for us in advance. Later on, we're going to hear from the one and only Gus Monsanto from Revolution Renaissance and Adagio. His current band, Rodrigo, please say it, because I can't.
He tours a lot locally, but tonight, exactly tonight, he's opening for Living Color with a band called Seu Hockey in Rio.
And that's why I asked you to say it and not me. His other band, Human Fortress, is going to be touring with Rage in Europe very soon, so watch out for that if you're on that continent. Now, normally this is a fun show where the panelists talk both music and trash with and at each other, but today's going to be a little more somber. The reason for that is that on the morning of 8th of June, 2019, Andre Matos' wife posted on social media that she had found her dear husband dead. An official statement came out later on that day, and it has since been revealed that a heart attack was the cause of death. Mr. Matos was only 47 years old. Andre Matos founded two influential metal bands in Brazil. First up, he had Viper, who released two albums in the late 80s, but he is mostly known for being the frontman and the brains behind the band Angra, whom he fronted from 1999 until 2001 or thereabouts. With them, he released one of the hallmark albums of power metal, Holy Land, in 1996. Now, some of our panelists know Matos just as the guy from Angra and Shaman. Some of us knew him as a colleague. Some of us knew him as a friend. But gentlemen, what we're going to do tonight is that I want to hear your stories about Andre Matos meant to you. And because he's a regular on this podcast, I would like to start with Rodrigo. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here, but this is a bittersweet episode for me, like you just said, Gonzo. I have been away from TP for a while, and I could not join you guys tonight because, Angra is very dear to my heart, as well as all the other output of Andre Matos. And I first heard of him in Viper when the second Viper album came out, Theater of Fate. I listened to that album on and on when I was in high school. And at the time, it was like we finally had our priest or our own maiden, from our backyard here. And then when it came to Angra, oh my God, it just exploded. I can leave my talk about Angra for later on for you guys, but it impressed me a lot. I heard the demo when it came out in 1993. So there were talks about that demo for a while now, and then I finally heard it with a friend of mine. And no other demo tape has impressed me more before or since that demo. But
now you're talking about Reaching Horizons, correct?
Reaching Horizons, yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, that demo's legendary to this day.
It is, man. It is. And it was at the time my only exposure to power metal was Halloween, and they took it to a different level, incorporating more symphonic stuff, more Brazilian regional rhythms as well, so that impressed the hell out of me.
Fabio, would you like to chime in?
Yeah. Well, I had my first contact with Andra's work when I was 13 or 14 years old. Me and my neighborhood friends, we used it to hang out at a video game store. And there, besides playing video games, of course, we talked about music, and I always took my acoustic guitars, and we used it to sing too, but not heavy metal. We used it to sing Brazilian rock music, pop, and the heaviest music that I knew at this time was Guns N' Roses. Until one day, one of the guys came in with 3 albums in his hands. Rhapsody, Dawn of Victory, Halloween, The Time of the Oath, and Angra, Angels Cry. His old brother borrowed him, and he said, "You have to listen to this." The owner of the place was a little bit older than us. Then he picked up the records and found a song. He said, "Whoa, the song is from Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights." Then he put the album on the PlayStation, and we've listened to this track for the next few weeks. So after this, I borrowed the album, and then my life changed completely, because they were heavier than Guns N' Roses, and the style of Andra's voice was very high and peculiar and beautiful, and the band was technically awesome. So this day I got caught completely by the heavy metal world. And 1 year and a half later, I was forming my first heavy metal band.
He had that profound an impact on you, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
The guitar player, one of the guitar players of the band, had all Angra's records: Fireworks, Freedom Call, Holy Live, and Holy Land. For me, this is the Angra masterpiece until today. Was mind-blowing to have all of those elements together and working together. So more than this, Holy Land gave me a sense of pride in having a Brazilian band doing that. And then gave me the courage to try to have a band with that artistic approach and cultural appeal. The booklet was a map, man. They have a poem by Fernando Pessoa. All the guest musicians, the percussionists, and the subjects in of the lyrics about the navigations and Brazilian discovery. And after this, I discovered many things in common between André and me. We were born the same day. I played the piano since I was a child, and I discovered that he played too. So this little and cool discoveries, in an innocent way, said to me that I could rather be an international artist like him. So it's very touching and inspired to talk about it.
Tiago, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think what you guys have to understand is that for Brazilians, Brazilian metal singers to lose André is like for Americans to lose Dio or for British to lose Bruce Dickinson. It's that much of an impact.
Wow.
Because this is the first reference for many of us. Because for me, to this day, he's still a reference. Because he's one of the few metal vocalists that we had in Brazil that was also an instrumentalist. He played an instrument very, very well. And his English was really good, and his lyrics were really good. And this is something that is not common in Brazil to this day. Like, you have amazing singers, but then the lyrics are not that great sometimes, or they don't play an instrument. So this guy that gathered everything in one person is not common to see over here.
I don't know, man. Like, there's this band called DAYDREAM XI that are pretty good. And their singer plays an instrument. You know, their lyrics aren't dumb. How big of an impact did all that have on making you who you are now?
Absolutely. You know, because he was my first reference. It was like, I have to be at least as good as this guy, because when I was being born, this guy was already singing professionally. It's like, it's crazy. But I remember very clearly the first time that I listened to him singing. I was going to a party with some friends, like a house party. Not like unlike Fabio, I was not going to play video games. I was going to drink. And it's like, there was this big screen, and they were projecting Dr. Sin's DVD. The last song on the DVD was with Angra, and he was playing a song, singing a song called Fire, and it blew my mind. I was like, "What the hell is that?" It's like a cross between Steve Perry and Bruce Dickinson and a bunch of other things that I never heard of. And I was like, "Who the hell is that?" And my friends were all like, "This is André Matos. Don't you know that guy?" And I was really into Metallica and Iron Maiden and Guns N' Roses at the time. And I didn't know like any of the power metal stuff that was going on. And at the time, Angra was putting out Rebirth. So the whole discussion between which lineup was better was like on fire. Like some people preferred the new lineup, and other people were like, no, you have to listen to the old stuff. And then I think it was Shaman's Ritual and then Angel's Cry, like in a week, and I was completely blown away by the sheer musicianship and the way that he sang the high notes and the clear tone. It was like, it changed my perception. Like, losing him is like losing a teacher. You know, that the first music teacher you had when you were a kid that taught you things that you didn't even imagine it was possible for you to learn. And I was pretty struck. It was pretty hard.
Now, we've been hearing exclusively from Brazilians, you know, that kind of had something of an inside track on Angra and on André Matos. I want to hear from Damien now, because he kind of got it from faraway shores. What's your history with Angra and with André Matos, Damien?
My story might not be as touching as the other guys, being that I'm an American, not a Brazilian. But my history with them goes back really far. I was actually thinking about it the other day, trying to remember how I actually found Angra, because way back in the early '90s. And of course, I didn't live in San Antonio back then. I lived in a small town outside of San Antonio. We had no music store. There was no way to get music. So most of the time I had to get my music by ordering it out of heavy metal magazines. I don't know, Gonzo, if you remember.
I do.
You do? Okay, I don't know if
do.
you did that, but that was how I discovered Blind Guardian back then. That was probably how I discovered Gamma Ray. And in fact, I specifically remember there was one of those ads where I saw the Gamma Ray album in there, and it said, Kai Hansen on there. And I remember asking myself, oh my God, is that the same Kai Hansen from Halloween? And so more than likely I ordered Angel's Cry from a magazine. And that was just kind of something you had to do. You had to just take a chance on, there's this band in this magazine. It says this style of heavy metal. And back then, of course, the early '90s for me was, I always define it as the never-ending search for a band that sounded like Halloween, because I could never find one.
Not on these shores. It was a hard thing to find in the United States in the '90s.
Oh, it was terrible, man. And we've had Hogwild, the record store, for a really long time.
Great place.
And by the time I got a car and I was able to just drive into San Antonio and go talk to those people over there, they were suggesting stuff that wasn't even semi-close to Halloween. Just having Angra and having something else to listen to that was, power metal and, similar to Halloween, that was huge for me. And of course, when Holy Land came out, I think it was about 1996, right? 96, 97, somewhere around there.
96.
94.
Yeah.
94.
94 was Holy Land?
Yeah, it's before Roots, guys. Before Sepultura's Roots, which also mixed a little bit of the Brazilian indigenous music and so on, but it was before.
Oh, wow. Okay,
I am fact-checking you right now, Rod.
Sorry, 96. You're correct.
okay. So I am correct.
I was going to go in to say that. Okay.
That was just a guess. But anyhow, for me, that was a huge, huge album. and I remember specifically just getting into arguments with other metalheads, who were calling it world music, and that's not real heavy metal, and just this always having to defend it in some way, and always referring back to, well, yeah, you might not like the Brazilian elements, but look at the musicianship and listen to what they've done, because nobody else has done anything like this, and I think back then I knew that they were going to, I knew that they were going to change heavy metal in general, and I think they did, and I think they were a big part of bringing power metal to the forefront, and they were there for the truly important years of power metal, which I think were right about that time, Holy Land, to somewhere in the early 2000s, and not that power metal is not great now, and of course it has its moments and its great bands now, but the bread and butter is from that period, and I think most people would probably agree with that we're actually there during the time period and listening to those bands. So I have nothing but gratitude in my heart to Andre, and to the entire band. Of course, it was a band effort, but it was Andre's voice, and for the most part his lyrics, and just his style, and his soul that was on every single one of those songs, and yeah, they're timeless.
Yeah, I think that really gets to the heart of what a complex role Andre Matos played in music. I mean, like, he was an incredibly accomplished singer. He was an incredibly accomplished multi-instrumentalist, but he also brought a great deal of, what's the word I'm looking for? Of not elegance, not grace, but panache to everything that he did. He left his mark on it in a way that was easily identifiable, not just by his incredibly distinctive voice. He was very unique in that way. Now, Tiago mentioned a moment ago that Andre, being an accomplished singer and an accomplished multi-instrumentalist, had a big impact on that, and I'm wondering how that impacted Fabio, because Fabio is also a fantastic singer, and he's also a great keyboardist. So, is there any relation there with you, Fabio?
Yeah, but I started to play piano before I know his work. And this things we had in common just gave me courage to accept me as a singer and a keyboard player, because I didn't know a lot of singers that played piano in my musical world at the time, because I used it to hear Nirvana and Guns N' Roses. But I know that Axl Rose played the piano, but I didn't know very well. So I was my first band when I formed my first band. I have 10 years old, 11 years old. So was more like a punk rock band. So when I started to play piano, was a little bit different, because I could not play piano in my band. So when I knew the Andre's work was very inspiring.
Now, I do want to get back to one very distinctive trait that Andre had, and that was the very sound of his voice. There was no question that he had an incredible control over it, and there's no question that his voice is very, very unique. And there's no question at all that the way that he controlled it was incredibly powerful. But that very distinctiveness of his voice kind of, what was, I wouldn't say controversial, but there were, people that don't like it, but those who love it, love it. So I kind of wonder what you guys have to say about, like, how would you describe Matos' voice to those that aren't familiar with it, and also how would you defend it against, from people who might say unkind things about it? Let's start with Tiago.
Okay, so I started teaching vocal lessons when I was 21, and he's always been a subject in my classes because a lot of students come to me because they want to sing metal, and in Brazil, this is basically the main reference point. And the way that he controlled his mix voice and his head voice in the higher register is something very, very unique. Like, he set the bar so high for that type of technique that a lot of people have been trying to follow his steps in the later years. Like, I remember Carry On was like the one to be tamed. You know, like everyone, when you start singing, you start learning, people will go like, oh, but can you sing Carry On? Can you sing the high notes and Carry On? And it was the benchmark for singing high in Brazil for like everyone. And like a week ago or so, I was going through that song and I realized that I can go higher than that today. And I never even went near that song in like the last 10 years because it was so scary. We're so afraid of that song I was so afraid when I was a kid because it was the benchmark and like those high notes. But the way that he goes up to those notes is something that it's not usual. You can study a lot. You can try really hard, but he had this light quality to his voice that he would just go high, and then it sounded very uniform in his whole register. So what I would say to people that don't like is like, well, taste is particular to anyone, but technically the guy was way ahead of his time. And as a Brazilian heavy metal singer, I can totally say that we lost the best of us.
Yeah, that's heavy, man. Rodrigo, what do you think?
I was curious to find out. I never learned the full history of him, but I know that he started actually as a piano player, like we spoke before. But he was kind of convinced to sing for Viper, but almost by accident because they didn't have a singer. There was no one to sing for the band. But I guess in that sense, his classical training helped him a lot to develop precision, to develop, attention to his tone and everything. I guess that helped him in the beginning. But I'd be curious to find out actually from the Viper guys, how did that decision happen and what it was like in the very beginnings when he started to sing, right? Because he developed into this beast, this monster of a singer that we knew, that we know today, right? So, but he started at a very, very young age too. I remember Kiko saying that when they were 14, 15 years old, Kiko Loureiro from Angra, everybody in his school looked up to him already because of his classical training, because he knew all these classical pieces and so on. So I'm hoping someone else chimes in on Facebook or YouTube about his very beginnings as a singer.
Damien, what are your thoughts?
Well, I guess I'd like to go back to your question because I think you, in specific, you wanted to know like how you defend against that. And I had to do that many times, not just with Andre Matos, but with quite a lot of other power metal singers and bands in general. And back then somebody would hear it and, well, what you listen to sounds like Nintendo music, or that guy sounds like he's squealing or whatever. And I never really had a real defense against it, other than to say to people that you really just need to step out of your Metallica, Megadeth comfort zone and try something else. For me, way back then, defending what I liked was really important. Nowadays, not so much. I don't really bother with it. If people don't like it, it doesn't bother me. But back then, that was kind of the only thing you could do. You really couldn't do much except just tell people that they were incredibly limited and that they were limiting themselves and to just this one little teeny tiny corner of heavy metal. Well, it's not a teeny tiny corner because probably most bands do take their influence from Metallica, Megadeth, and similar bands. But I just used to at least try to encourage people to reach new horizons. Haha. So yeah, that was my take. Trying to throw that little pun in there.
Yeah.
Fabio, let's hear from you.
Well, I think that he was very unique and different, and that causes this kind of reaction of love or hate. For me, he was between the lyrical style of singing and the popular, so was a little softer than the normal, than the usual heavy metal singers. So I think this, for being different, caused this kind of reaction. But was
Can I
good.
contribute just a bit? I think that look, just looking at the track list on Angel's Cry, for example, just his choice of Wuthering Heights, just him choosing that song proves what a singer he is, because it's a very tough song. It's on a very high register, and Tiago and Fabio can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a tough song to sing, and it's not a traditional song that a heavy metal singer would choose.
Yeah.
Right? So that in
It's
itself
pretty
tells a
fucking
lot
hard.
about- yeah. So that in itself tells a lot about his musical choices and how much he cared about his voice and how much he wanted to showcase it.
What was his actual range? I mean, was he a tenor? Was he like a contralto? Like, where is he in the register?
A lyrical tenor.
Say that one more time.
A lyrical tenor.
Okay.
The higher type of tenor.
Okay. Do you know how wide his range is?
Let me think.
Like, just a ballpark estimate.
His lower note was on fairy tale, G2, and his highest note was on, I think, Carry On, a C flat, a C5 flat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty incredible that he was able to do everything within that range with such power. Like that's what really knocked me out, because like I was never fortunate enough to see Andre perform live, but like I have seen like YouTube videos and I've seen some Avantasia DVDs, where he's performing, and like what really knocked me out was his prowess as a frontman and as a performer, and how his activities on stage did not take away from the strength of his technical performance. Like that's really what won me over about him. But like I've only seen videos on YouTube and I've seen those DVDs, and that's it. I never saw him live. Rodrigo, I think you saw him live, didn't you?
I saw him live on a very special occasion in 2006. It was a Live and Louder festival. It was a crazy, crazy bill, because we had a German band called Got Hard. We had Nevermore, which I know you're a fan of.
Oh, I love Nevermore.
Yeah. We had Primal Fear. What else? After Forever. Jesus, that's a long lineup. Stratovarius. And we had Andre releasing his solo career, trying to launch a solo career at the time. It was his first solo record. And the festival closer was David Lee Roth.
Wow.
Had nothing to do with the rest of the other bands, but Andre, he played a good show. I think a couple of the guys in his band at the time they left Shaman as well and joined him in that band. And that solo career generated 3 albums, and then he eventually went back to Viper for a Union tour, and then Avantasia and so on. His output of late was kind of sparse because he took care of his grandfather, who was sick at the time, so he took care of him. And a fun fact about Andre, all his family lives in the same building in different apartments, and he took care of his grandfather in later years.
That says something about his character.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. And then, so on that show, it was billed as a surprise guest. No one revealed who was going to be this attraction until the very last minute. And then we found out that it was Andre releasing his first solo record. He played a bunch of Angra songs at the time, a bunch of Shaman songs as well, and Viper songs. But primarily, the set list was focused on his new album, to be released then. It was a cool show, man. And he's still, like, even now the last Shaman show is on YouTube in full. It was June 2nd this year. He still had that voice, you know, even in his later years, he still maintained his voice. He still maintained his stage presence and everything. So he didn't lose an inch of his performance or his range.
No, Fabio, Tiago, did you guys ever see him live?
I saw him like first time was with Shaman when they were releasing Ritual or Reason, I'm not sure. And the openers were Magician and Celerata, two very good bands from around here.
Cool.
And that I ended up singing in Magician a few years later. And it was a massive show. Like Shaman was really, really big in the country at the time. And it was amazing. I was mind blown. And then the second time was in the first edition of Live and Louder down here in the South with Rage and Scorpions and a bunch of other bands. And Shaman again. Then I saw him with his solo career a few years later. And in 2014, we shared the stage with him for the release of The Grandest Guys, our debut album. It was Daydream 11 and Andre Matos with his Angels Cry anniversary tour. And it was insane because some of the reviews were like saying that our show was better. And I was like, what the fuck are you guys thinking about? What the hell is that? It's like, what drug are you guys taking? Because I was so amazed to be sharing the bill with him because he was a major influence to us, and we were releasing our first album like playing before him, and it was our first time in that venue called Opinion here in Porto Alegre. It was the first time that we played not as the opener, not as a support, not paying to play there, you know. We played with Angra and Symphony X and a bunch of other bands there before, but that was the first time, and it was with Andre. He was not really into that buy-on thing. So if he took a band on the bill, he would be like endorsing that. So it was a pretty good thing for us, and a lot of people still come to us to this day saying that they knew the band in that concert. But I kind of regret that in that day, I didn't go to him and I didn't say what I wanted to say at the time, how he influenced me. So I never had like a personal contact with him except for like a signing session a few years before. But he was insane live, like the energy that he had on stage, like he was always running around and singing those insanely high notes, and in the Shaman years, he was like really singing really aggressively. He had this kind of raspiness to his voice, in the higher register as well. So it was pretty cool to see him live. He was such a showman, and yeah, basically that was it.
Yeah, about that raspiness, I think the first time that I had ever heard him do that was when Angra covered Painkiller for a couple of Judas Priest tribute albums that came out in the late 90s. And that was actually when I first heard of Angra. When I went back and investigated their catalog, like what are the things that really stood out to me about him in particular was how much he was able to do. Because, you know, he did that really, really obnoxious, gnarly Halford-type falsetto so well. Like, I honestly think that he did it better than Halford did. For that
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know, and that's not a dig at Mr. Halford because he's Mr. Halford, but Andre gave him a run for his money on that track. Holy balls, dude.
Yeah, I agree. I remember when that came out, like all my friends were sending that to me, and the endless hours discussing how the hell was he doing it and what technique he was using. It was like, man, what the hell is that? So it was pretty good.
So from what context were you able to see Andre perform? I mean, like, were you hanging out backstage? Were you like up there in the front row with the audience?
For the first three shows, it was just like in the audience, but with the one that we shared the bill with him, we hanged a bit with him, but he was very reserved guy. He was like he liked to have his space. He was not very much into the whole gathering with the people, but I didn't have too much of a personal contact with him at the time.
Yeah, but I saw him.
I believe Fabio had.
I saw him 4 times, 3 with Shaman, and the first time in 2003, and then I went to 2 shows from the retail tour, and then the Reason tour, and then 5 times. The 4th time with Viper on the 25-year celebration tour, and I met him personally 3 times. The first one with Shaman, but only saying hi. But with Viper in 2015, there is a curiosity about this occasion, because I bought the meet and greet, and I took the Holy Land booklet. I said, I have all your records, André, but I would not have you autograph all of them. So I brought the one that is the most special to me. And I gave him the first MAESTRICK record, Puzzle. And he said, okay, I will sign, but you have to sign for me first. So he was very humble and very gentle. So I gave an autograph to André Matos.
That is so cool. Wow.
Yeah. It was very exciting because he was not being political. That was sincere. And I think he was more than a great artist, he was a great human being. And I think that when he was, it's difficult to tell about him in the past. But when we were talking, he looked at me in the eye. Was not someone saying things to let me happy. So was very sincere and was perfect for me. And then the last time I talked to him was last year. He was one of the guest musicians of the DVD recording of the Brazilian metal opera Soul Spell. Heleno Vale, the creator of this project, is a great friend of mine, and he invited me and my girlfriend to go there. And he gave me all access to backstage. And when I met André, I gave him the MAESTRICK last album, and I had the opportunity to say to him all that I feel and all the good things that he brought to me. So was great. Was very touching for me to talk about this. And he gave me a hug and said thank you, and we took a picture and say goodbye.
Man, thank you for sharing that story. Thank you. That's pretty touching.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to wrap this up pretty soon, but I don't want to wrap it up without hearing from everybody on this panel what you think André Matos' legacy is. What is he leaving behind, and how is his legacy and how is his influence carrying on, so to speak, into the future? Damien, you're a fellow American. Let's start with you.
Well, that's actually a really tough question. But I think when people talk about power metal 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now, I think the name André Matos is going to be one of those that pops up. And of course, we all know the guys from Halloween will pop up. More than likely, Timo Tolkki and Kotipelto will pop up, and undoubtedly Kiko and Andre are going to pop up in any conversation, and hopefully it's more than 40, 50 years, maybe 1,000 years into the future, they'll be talking about it. But that's what I think his legacy will be, what he contributed in terms of helping to bring power metal to the forefront, and helping to shape the sound that I think a lot of people did end up later incorporating, because they really were some of the first ones to start with the whole symphonic thing, and it may not have been to the extent that your bands do it now, where you have complete full orchestra and these just film score sounding elements inside of the music. But when you really go back and listen to the early Angra albums, not only were they incorporating their own cultural music, they were incorporating all the symphonic stuff, and I think that laid the framework for a lot of the other bands that came along and just kind of built on that. So that's what I think his legacy is.
Pretty broad scope of influence right there. Rodrigo, a Brazilian in exile, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I think there's two takeaways from this scenario, this situation that we faced. A young guy, only 47 years old, passed away. Well, I think there's two main takeaways. The first one is that if you're a Brazilian, if you're a musician, he showed it first that it can be done. You can put together a metal band, a metal outfit in Brazil and be successful. Think about the scenario where he put this together, with Viper and then with Angra, a country that since forever has been marred with political and economical instability, and he did it, right? So we have two great examples here with DAYDREAM XI and MAESTRICK, two great bands that can carry the torch forward. It can be done, guys. Get your metal outfit, get your guitars, get your microphone out there and sing and play. And the other thing is Kiko revealed that there were talks of reviving that first Angra lineup, the original lineup, for a run of shows, and Andre wanted to do it. But at the same time, money gets in the way, or hurt feelings from the past get in the way. Don't postpone your plans, guys. Don't leave it for tomorrow. If you have regrets, if you have something, if you have an agenda to take care of, do it today, do it now.
Excellent, and very wise words. Thank you, Rodrigo. Fabio, you're part of the current crop of the Brazilian metalheads that are doing some great things out there. Where do you see Andre's legacy carrying on?
Well, I think that Andra was one of the great artists of our time. I think future generations will remember him as Heitor Villa-Lobos or Chiquinha Gonzaga, great Brazilian artists. I think his legacy will grow bigger and bigger over the years. Was, as I told, a very talented guy as an artist, but as a human being too. Because I believe that the real function of an artist is to make better the places where they go. And Andra was one of those guys, and I'm one of the one that he made better. So no matter where you are, Andrea, thank you so much for everything.
And thank you, Fabio, for sharing that. And also thank you for name-dropping Villa-Lobos. It's been a long time since I've heard that name. Tiago, what you got?
Well put, guys. And I think that we'll always be, we'll always have that sensation, that feeling that we'll never see that first lineup of Angra reuniting again. And this is pretty sad because it's been 20 years and a lot of people wanted to see that. And to find out that was going to happen, like it's pretty hard to take. But in a global perspective, I think we lost one of the most unique, most versatile power metal singers, and also one of the best songwriters in power metal history. And from a national perspective, especially for Brazilian singers, as I said before, we lost the best of us, and we lost our first reference, the guy that paved the way for all of us. We lost our Dio, we lost our Bruce Dickinson or our Rob Halford. But his legacy lives on through his music. There's a lot of music from him out there, and I hope we can show it to our kids, to our grandsons, and keep having those discussions if they like that unique voice or not.
I'm really, really grateful that you guys joined me for this discussion. I unfortunately was robbed of the opportunity to see Andre Matos when he canceled his performance at Prague Power 2009. And like, fortunately for us, Crimson Glory stepped in and gave probably the most incredible performance of their career. But, now that this has happened, I'm always going to regret not being able to see such an incredible performer do his thing on stage. Like, a part of me broke when I heard that there were talks about doing an Angra reunion for a run of shows, and like, I'm fairly certain that would have ended up at Prague Power. I can say that with a very, very, very fair degree of certainty.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
And I'm sure Rodrigo would have been there, and I'm sure Tiago would have been there.
Oh my God, I wouldn't miss it for the world, guys.
Yeah, I would probably be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I certainly would have been there, but we'll always have the music. So we have that to be grateful for. Once again, I'm grateful to you guys. Thank you once again to our panelists tonight, Fabio Caldeira.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great honor, and thank you.
Thank you so much. And Tiago Masseti?
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. Like, it's been pretty hard for us to be mourning this loss pretty soon, and this certainly helps to see that his work touched people all around the world. And thanks for inviting me. It's an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you. Damien Villareal?
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me. And it was a wonderful experience just to hear everyone's perspective and to hear about their experiences. And I'm grateful.
Yeah, and I'm grateful to you, man. Thank you. And Rodrigo Altaf, el terror de Canadá.
Soy yo. No, thanks so much, guys. It's great to be back to another TP in a lighter form this time, more concise format, which I appreciate and I love. So I'm hoping to be there for the next rounds as well, if and when we have them.
Yep.
When we have them. We'll always have them.
Yep,
right?
yep. We will. It'll keep happening. Once again, guys, I'm really grateful for y'all's time, and I do regret that this had to happen under these circumstances. We lost a good one last week.
That we did.
Yeah. Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for us, but we are going to hear a pre-recorded message from some guy named Gus Monsanto that we've heard in many, many, many bands. But from us, thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Gonzo.
What's up, man?
Just one last thing. We didn't talk about the petition, man. There's a freaking petition to make June 8th the Metal Day in Brazil.
Oh,
fuck, we forgot.
Okay. Talk about this.
Yeah. So before we go, I just wanted to say, and you or Joe are gonna plug that in our post of this TP, but there is an online petition in Brazil to make June 8th, the day of Andre's passing, the day of metal in Brazil. Right now, I just checked it, there's 36,000 signatures. We need as many as we can get, and you don't have to be Brazilian to vote.
Well,
it's I won't say the link because it's a long link, but we can post it here.
We'll post it in the show notes, and it will end up on Sonic Perspectives. I have one objection. I think that it should be on his birthday.
Yeah, a lot of people commented on that, but that's the petition that was created. So,
in either case, I think it's a fantastic way to honor an incredible man who made a lot of contributions to his craft.
As we announced at the beginning of this episode, Gus Monsanto couldn't join us today, but he sent us his thoughts regarding the passing of Andre, and we'll play the audio now for you to conclude this tribute to him. Thank you for listening, and see you guys next time.
Hello there, this is Gus Monsanto. It's a pleasure being with you guys, talking here. And I'm the singer in Human Fortress, and some of you might know me from Adagio and Revolution Renaissance previously. If it wasn't for Andre and also Max Cavalera on a different kind of music, on a different kind of metal, we wouldn't have such a prolific, such an active metal scene in Brazil, because these guys, they just proved people that, this is a third world country, but we still have talented people. We still have unique personalities. We can actually go across the world and deliver our music. Before there was Sepultura and before there was Angra, having metal bands from Brazil was as weird as saying, I don't know, metal bands from Mongolia getting into the mainstream or the bigger international heavy metal scene. I mean, that was unheard of for Brazilian musicians and South American, Latin American musicians before those guys. So Andre, for us, was like a visionary. It was amazing to see this guy. I'm 44 years old. Andre was 47. And his first record, his first band was Viper. And his first album was back in 87 called Soldiers of Sunrise. And I was just so blown away that a guy who was 15, 16 years old could go on stage and kick that much ass and be that amazing. That was incredible. So for us, this guy has been a hero from day one because he was very influenced by Maiden and Dickinson and all that. After Viper, his next band was Angra. And it was like a natural progression of that because he actually started studying classical music, and the other guys in his band were like virtuosos, like, Kiko Loureiro, who is now with Megadeth. Even when these guys were like 17, 18, they were already a huge caliber musician. So for us, these guys were like guiding lights actually in the scene. They were amazing. Amazing. Everyone in Brazil right now is so sad. It's a collective loss. Everyone is so upset. And because this guy made us proud, this guy was respected anywhere on the planet. This guy went out of his way when he sang in Germany. He was such an intelligent guy. He was a great composer. He was a great pianist. He was a great arranger. He was a top-notch singer. I mean, this guy was like the full package. I think he could speak something like 6 or 7 languages. It's a huge loss for not only the rock community, but I think that it's a loss for Brazilian culture. The whole country is so bummed because this caught us like off guard. It was horrible, man. Actually, I had a gig last Saturday, after getting the news, I had to go on stage and sing, and it was like one of the most difficult singing evenings I ever had. It was really difficult going out and doing my job because, I was so heartbroken. And it's hard to explain that to people when they actually don't have that kind of connection with music and art. The passing of an artist could leave you. It totally felt like family. I mean, I've been on stage with Andre a couple of times. He was not a friend per se, but every time I met the guy, he was super nice. He was adorable. He was a very gentle guy, always had a nice word to say, and that's a horrible feeling of loss. I got feedback from people from all over the world, Japan, France, Germany, everywhere. This guy was adored, man. He was really one of a kind.